could, I guess, say, guess who's back?
Hey, surprise!
Surprise, surprise.
Worst power grid in the history of America, Claremore,
Yeah,
Oklahoma.
I don't know. Have you seen, so I was on TikTok this morning, and you obviously know all the things that are going on in Houston, right? So there was a lineman on TikTok that was talking about how many linemen have had to leave the area because they've been threatened, and it is not like these are men and women who are trying to get people's power back on for them.
Yep.
And I think Houston at one point, I think he said like 6 million customers or something were without power.
And that's
And
6 million homes. That's not 6 million people. It's probably 20 million people.
exactly.
It's insane. There's
And,
still, I think, 300,000.
and he was saying how it was that, yeah, they were having all kinds of issues. And I'm like, what in the hell is wrong with society? So,
The videos are horrible. It's
oh, I
horrible.
know. So, guess who's with me today? I know it's been about a month since I've done a podcast, but for those of you listening, I have the none other than the queen of drag racing media in my mind, and I think a lot of others, Miss Ellen Eschenbacher. Hello, Ellen. Welcome finally to the show, because I've been doing this on and off for I don't know how long now, and you and I have never, ever done a podcast together.
And I have a lot to say.
Well, and correction, we've both been guests on the same podcast at the same time before, but you've never been on the podcast from the company that is named after you. So, I'm just saying, if you don't know Ellen, she's got a storied history in drag racing. She's been around just as long as I have, and accomplished probably a lot more than I have.
No.
Well, that's neither here nor there. It's funny because you've got
Same circus, different monkeys,
you've got your people, I've got my people. That's the way that we always looked at it. And then some of them sometimes cross, it happens a lot more often now than it used to. I want to jump right into it. 5 years ago now, you made the transition. You moved out. You moved out away from Tennessee and out to Oklahoma, and have since taken over the Midwest Drag Racing Series, day-to-day operations, and pretty much everything that is Midwest Drag Racing Series. Now, with that said, previous to that, you and I were on the road for a solid 4.5 years, traveling around the country. And when I say traveling, we were probably driving 45,000 miles a year, and staying in RVs, staying in crappy hotels, and cruising the country in a small ass Subaru. The best road partner that I've ever had in my life. And Ellen sometimes has technical difficulties because electronics hate Ellen.
I haven't moved. Everything stays the same.
Just so we all know, Ellen and computers and cell phones, it's a terrible thing. So let me jump right into it. Again, 4.5 years that we were doing this on the road. We were doing 35, 40, sometimes more than 40 events a year. Obviously, Midwest doesn't have 40 events a year. We have 7 or 8, I think.
Eight.
And when I say we, I am at every Midwest event. I have been the series photographer since the beginning of season 2, end of season 1, something like that. And we got
the road trip together to the last race.
Exactly. So what season are we in now? 7 or 8?
8.
You sure about that?
No.
Maybe. Neither am I. Tell the fans out there, because listen, a lot of them miss you. They're used to seeing you at radio races and other pro mod races, and now I don't remember the last time we saw you at South Georgia, at Cecil County for Yellow Bullet. It's been a while. But what I want to know from you is what is the difference between doing what we did for 4.5 years with traveling the road and, living out of suitcases in a hotel pretty much because we were very rarely ever home.
Mm-hmm.
What is the difference between doing 35 or 40 events a year versus what you're doing now?
I'm home a lot more, but managing an entire series is a lot of work, way more than I ever thought it would be. As you know, Keith Haney owns the series. He also owns 9 dealerships now. He has a lot of business ventures outside of that, outside of racing. He has his race team, his family, farm, and he's busy. He is an incredible businessman. He's not a great paperwork person. So basically, I started with the paperwork end of it and have built it up. And when we started, there was Radio versus the World, X275, and Pro Mod. We kept the radio classes, I think, for 2 years, and then it just became too hard with track prep. We would have to have dedicated track prep because that was the era where if you didn't prep for the radios right, they lost their mind. And then when you prep for the radios, the Pro Mods lost their mind. So that was before there was a lot of harmony in running both in the same event. We added Top Sportsman, Top Dragster, then we added the 2 juniors classes, then we added Pro 420 and Funny Cars. So we are a 7-class series now, and it's a lot of work. It's so much follow-up. It's planning. It's hotels and contracts and just things that you just don't even think of that you need to do. And with working with one racer, how much chaos is in their life. I work with 150 of them. And then we decided, speaking of 150, to have a $150,000 race this year. No problem, no pressure.
Oh, no.
That race is more work than an entire season.
Everything will be fine.
Well, I have resigned to everything's going to be fine right now because it's coming. It's coming. We're not canceling. We're not stopping. We want to have it. And it's coming. It's nothing I can do is going to make it go any slower right now.
So let me ask you then, do you enjoy the grind of the Midwest series and what you have to do there? Is it a different kind of satisfaction, or do you miss the, 40 weeks a year on the road, the Waffle House or, whatever. And most of the time I couldn't even get her to eat, much less, everyone fed her at the track anyways. So, but most of the time, by the time we left the track, it was Waffle House if you were lucky enough to find one. So with that said, now that you're home much more, is it easier? Do you miss being on the road? How do you compare and contrast the two at this point?
I miss doing other things. I miss the diversity of radial and Pro Mod and Grudge and NHRA and stuff like that. I still do several NHRA races a year. But that I equate it to my real life and my Hollywood life. My Hollywood life, I get in an airplane and I go to NHRA and work my ever-loving ass off with crews and hospitality and setting up and breaking down and cooking for 500 people. And then when you're done and you're good at it, you pack the circus up and off it goes again. And then I fly home. So I'm still doing that, but it's different. I miss radial racing. I didn't realize how much I missed radial racing until the Flying H race that we had a radial class there. The track had 2 radial classes, and I saw some of my people and I miss them. I don't want to over exaggerate and say I miss Donald's races, only because 8 days of hell is hard. And you have a choice of how does Hex see? Well, now he has a series, but when I was doing it, you had Lights Out, No Mercy. Lights Out was you weren't going to survive pollen season in South Georgia, and No Mercy, it was so hot you didn't care. So I miss the people though. Donald's longevity cannot be, dismissed ever. He has built an empire.
So with that said, I'm going to ask the question that everybody wants to know. And without you, giving anything away, and I will tell the viewers, I don't have a say in this. I can give her my opinions. I may know a little bit more than others, but without giving anything away, will we ever see Ellen at Yellow Bullet, at Donald's No Mercy or Lights Out? Will we ever see you at those races again?
I think so. Aside from doing the NHRA thing, I try to pick 1 or 2 races a year to go to, completely nothing to do with Midwest. As far away from Midwest as I can go. I love to go to Bradenton because I can see other people. I can see, racers in other series and people who do the one-off thing. I would love to do Yellow Bullet again. I would, I'd love to do one of Donald's races again, but I don't think I could ever do it again from the aspect of 8 days until you were ready to cry at the end of the night. And then, how many years in a row that, we got there on Sunday, and by the time we were even in qualifying or barely starting eliminations on Friday, you're just so over it, you don't care.
Yeah.
You're so exhausted that you no longer care who wins or how they're running. You just have to get through it.
I remember, because I've been going to Donald's races just as long as you have. We both went to Donald's races long before we ever had this company. And my first Donald race was like February of 2010. Mm-hmm. By the time I think we reached 2000, and I want to be careful about, probably Dad passed away in 2018. So probably 2017, 2016, 2007, we were renting an RV. There were times where we would show up on Saturday and get our compound set up, and anybody who had ever been around back in those days, especially after the tornado came through and wiped out the suites above the grandstands, so we were like the parking for all the media also. There were times where we would show up on Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, and we were there until the following Monday. So to give people an idea of the gravity of that, you are on property at the racetrack from Saturday all the way through the entire week until Monday, because a lot of the time the racing didn't get done until late on Sundays. It has changed a little bit, and he has made an effort to get done much earlier on Sundays. And there is a curfew now. That's something else people don't. Oh, I know. I remember the days where we would be up until, and the nice thing is, when we decided to stay on property, which was, I think we did one race. I think we did Lights Out 7, where we were still staying at a hotel, and that was the zoo race. Because I remember we got off on one exit. It was backed all the way up to exit 32, which is where the railroad tracks are. I got right back on the interstate, and you looked at me like, where are we going? We went up to exit 39, went through 8L, and came back down the road that the track is on, and there was nobody waiting from that direction. Now, that changed about an hour later. It backed all the way up to this. I remember that was the last time you looked at me and you said, this is the last time we stay at a hotel. Every other time we did a Donald race, we rented an RV, or after Dad passed away, we used his RV for multiple races for about a year and a half. Mm-hmm. But there were times when we didn't have a curfew that you didn't get back to the RV until 3 o'clock in the morning, and then racing was pretty much, you were hot on track at 8 a.m.
Well, and the problem was also staying in the RV and staying right on the main road in the pits was, you'd finish at 2 or 3 in the morning, and people started drinking then, and often were drinking until sunrise, and there was no sleep. Once you got to about Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, you weren't sleeping. And that because the one person that went to sleep had to get up and fire his car up at 7 a.m. So, yep. And I remember distinctly Lights Out that when I was still able to do Facebook Live so much, it was in the afternoon because it was still daylight. I remember walking back to the RV. Like, I just walked off the starting line in the middle of a round and just went to the RV and laid down. And I mean, everybody was like, "Are you okay? Are you sick?" I'm like, I just needed 30.
People don't understand, and I can't speak for it because I've never, it's never been my thing. My thing is being out on the wall, taking photos. I used to be the young guy running around trying to capture everything. The ongoing joke now is John Four and I, when we're at the racetrack, we just hang out with each other and watch all the young kids do what we did a long time ago. Explain to people the physical and mental toll that being on the starting line for 12 or 13 hours a day. And listen, you were a pioneer when it came to Facebook Live. Like, nobody was doing Facebook Live when you started doing Facebook Live, and there was no monetization. We both would have been very wealthy people.
Richly female.
We would have been absolutely, like, we would have never had to leave the house again. We were, I mean, the millions and millions and millions of views. Had we had monetization for that at that time, there would have been no stopping us. What kind of toll does that take on you as a person, though, being on that starting line? And I know, you've got the weather and everything, but like, how exhausting is that? Because really right now there's only, and to his credit, Jay Warren has really kind of picked up the torch, if you will, since you went to Midwest, and is doing a lot of what you did. Obviously it's different, and I don't want to take away from Jay, because I think Jay does great work, and Jay has helped out tremendously when there have been live streams that have gone down that, Jay jumps right in and is able to do his thing. We didn't have, we didn't have the technical equipment and technology in general that you have nowadays. And with all the layovers as far as, branding partners and the ability to monetize and all those things. So kudos to Jay, and again, he's really the only other one doing it, at least in my mind. I mean, yes, there are some in the grudge world that do it here or there, but you're the type of person, though, that if somebody goes, well, what about this pass in 2004 with these two people at this track at this time? Like, you remember all of that, which still to this day, even after living with you for 5 years, that still just absolutely amazes me. What kind of toll does that take, though, mentally and physically, when you're out there for 10, 11, 12 hours a day?
It's hard. People bring you food, they offer you food, which is great, but when it's 100 degrees, I can't eat. Bring me an icy pop, bring me a bottle of water. Phil Hines always made sure that I had my favorite flavored water. People brought me things a lot, but it's loud. If you're watching, you're holding your phone, you're watching your feed as you're doing it so you can answer questions, and you're looking at the scoreboard, and you realize after, 6 or 8 hours of racing, you literally have no idea what happened, because even though you were talking about it and watching it, it goes so fast. And, people would be like, hey, who's in the semifinals? And I would really have to think, okay, this car was in the left lane and this car was in the right lane. And oh yeah, he smoked the tires, because there's just so much of it. Watching an entire race through the lens of a camera, there's just so many parts of it you miss. But the people are what made it good. And I got to the point where I didn't care as much about the racing as I did the people, which turned into the people's families and their pets and their kids and their moms. And then it turned into safety. And then it became, I couldn't watch people I knew get hurt or have to make the call home to someone whose loved one just crashed or something. And that, I think, took more of a toll on me. And now I'm at the point where it's really taking a toll on me.
Well, and let's kind of dive into that for a minute. And you and I have been around for a long time. We've seen a lot of things. Obviously, we were both there when we lost Ronnie Hobbs at Kansas, which is something that I don't think that you can ever forget. I don't know. I don't think you were at Brainington when Chaps was.
I was.
Okay.
Remember, I went down and got Paul Major and drove him back. Yeah.
That's right. So you and I have experienced a lot of this together, and now in the last few weeks, unfortunately, we lost Roger, who was probably one of the most well-known photographers. Roger and I always got along great. He had just a warped sense of humor like I do, so it just worked out. And then obviously within a couple of days, Lizzie Musey passed away. And you and I were lucky enough to know Lizzie long before the world. And I had a conversation with Courtney about this yesterday. You and I knew Lizzie long before the rest of the world did.
Yeah.
We were lucky enough to be around, coming up through the pro mod ranks, and I'll still always say one of the best pro mod moments I've ever seen was that burn down with Jay Cox. Was that at South Georgia? I think it was at South Georgia.
Pretty sure it was, yeah.
That was like 10 minutes. That was so epic.
The door flew open, her foot came out. I mean, it was great. You can't make that up.
Like, people don't talk about that enough. And then obviously over the weekend, Matt Zimmerman, who some of you probably don't know, was the owner of the Wolverine Pro Mod, and his son Brody ran juniors in Midwest for a couple of years. Unfortunately, Matt passed away. Again, our condolences go to Anita and Brody and Sloan and that entire organization and family, because he was just way too young. Do you think, though, that when you talk about...
Sorry, I had to finish something up. I'm listening.
No, you're good. When you, in case people don't know, Ellen actually has a full-time job outside of Midwest as well, doing logistics. So you talk about, the toll that it takes when we see an accident or we lose somebody within the industry. Do you think it's because, and I hate to say this, but it's fact, do you think it's because we're getting older, and it just it kind of is a constant reminder of our own mortality? Because I will tell you, 2 years ago when Wayne crashed at Tulsa, that was a huge wake-up call for me. And I tell people, it's not, especially when you're on the wall, and luckily enough, you and I, in the last decade, have been able to go through so much of this stuff together. We've been there when bad things have happened. And we share a lot of the same mutual friends. So we are able to call each other and kind of talk about these things. And I am forever grateful about that. But I also realize that both of us are approaching 50, and which is funny because Mom just asked me over the weekend about your 40th birthday, and I said, yeah, you remember, that's the night that I called her middle-aged while we were sitting at your house watching the Alabama football game. And I
prayed that Alabama won because I was afraid we weren't even getting pizza that night.
Yeah, that was but the older we get and we have to look at our own mortality and everything that's been happening, do you think that that's one of the reasons that it becomes more and more difficult for us to do what we do?
Yes, and something that I thought about just this week, Stevie's birthday was this week, and I know how old he is. I'm not going to say how old he is. And I thought, wow, he's getting older. And then I'm like, yeah, so am I. I mean, there's so many people in our world right now that are turning 50 this year. It's like, wow, 50, that used to be, 50, 55 was the end of your racing career or whatever. I mean, we're not going to the John Force thing, but I mean, people can easily race till they're 65 or 70 in good health. But the kids that were junior racing or were too little to junior race are in big cars now. you know?
I sent Angela Bruder a message. Or no, she was on I did a Facebook Live a couple of nights ago that she dropped into.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember before Jules was even born. And now she posts photos, and I'm like, that child is, no, that can't be right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I start to feel it more and more when my friends that are grandparents, well, first, when as a photographer, because I do more photography than just outside or than just drag racing. I also do, senior photos and boudoir and weddings and yada yada yada. When they start contacting me about having their kids' senior photos done or their grandkids' baby photos done, I'm like, is this real life at this point? And I look at, obviously Roger had a wonderful life. Like the stories that Roger told, I hope that I have half of the experiences that man did. But then I look at somebody like Lizzie who had, a whole lifetime ahead of her, and I go, well, this is just not fair. And then Matt, who was also about the same age as us, like, I don't know. It makes you think about what's truly important, and I try not to be jaded all the time about what's going on in our industry, and it can be very soul sucking.
You can. But if you think about it like that, and you think about, I'm getting older, people are getting older with us, and the people that are just meeting now in drag racing, we'll be taking pictures of them and with their kids and the juniors, and it's oh, hello, something. Can you still see me? Am I still here? Okay. It's like when people call during my Facebook Live. But we'll be living on with the next generation, and that's okay. I think the harder part is the ones that we've lost, the Ronnie Hobbs, the Matt Zimmerman, the Scotty Oaksis, the Lizzie that were young, I mean, I'm not saying anything about Roger, that, but I mean, Roger lived a life. He lived a full, happy life.
I agree.
If we don't take something away from Lizzie dying, then her life wasn't as worth it as it could have been. We have to take something away. We have to get checked when you're sick, get checked when you feel something. Nobody in the world has bathroom problems or throwing up or whatever and goes to the doctor anymore. You just don't.
Well,
it's normal. Whatever, you just move on.
You and I have talked about this for years, that and I mean, even going back, to my early 40s. I mean, you were there when I had my belt with Bell's palsy, and you were probably the first person to find out that I had found out when I was in the hospital that I had a stroke. But you also know that I don't take care of myself. I don't go to the doctor. Like, none of us, and I'm not going to start to get into the political road of how the medical system in this country works, but let's face it, you and I and a host of others have done terribly at taking care of ourselves, whether it's our vision, our dental, our heart health. Jason Reese having to go through all of the colon stuff that he's had to deal with, and Krusty Ramsey, and now Michelle Cato with her cancer stuff. And and not to be a Debbie Downer about stuff, I think that a lot of us do a really good job at coming together after those things happen. But the problem is, what do we do to move forward and be in a more preventive state than a reactive state when it comes to all these things?
You have to get checked. You have to get checked, and you have to push for it. Lizzie had insurance. She went to the doctor. She did the right things. I mean, I don't want to give away too much behind the scenes of her life because I don't recall what she made public. But she went and she pushed and she pushed and she had tests and she didn't think something was right and something still wasn't right. And then when she was in Australia, got a phone call, something's not right. And I don't remember the duration, but it had been months. And she did the right thing by going to the doctor. It's, I don't know. You just have to be your own advocate and you have to take care of yourself. When Roger Burgess had the Get Screened America thing and sponsored NHRA Pro Mod, and they had that truck that came to the races, and I don't remember what they did. Seems like it was colonoscopies maybe and breast exams, or maybe it was just blood tests. I don't know. But it was free. And you could talk some of the racers into doing it if it was in their face. And I think health is in so many people's faces right now that we just have to keep pushing that. We got to keep people okay, Lizzie needs to be a wake-up call. And the reason I'm using her is because she's the biggest name right now, and she was 33. We got to do better.
Do you think that some of it has to do with and I'm asking for a woman's perspective on this. It's obviously a male-dominated industry. Do you think some of that as far as the health aspect of it plays into it, because guys don't like going to the doctor? If I don't have to go to if I don't go to the doctor, nothing's wrong with me, because if I don't know if anything's wrong with me, then nothing's wrong with me. That kind of mental mindset, I think we've started to see a shift in it. But do you look at it as, this is a very large group? If you look at drag racing as a whole, it's a very large group of people. Do you think that some of that mental mindset of, I'm not going to the doctor, I'm a guy, I'm tough, I don't have to, has some of that played a factor in the last 5, 10, 15 years, you think?
I think it has. And I got to take care of my kids, or my kid is sick, or I've got an event or something. There's always an excuse. And inherently in our area of drag racing, most of these people are business owners, small business owners, that with the cost of insurance right now, most small business owners can't afford it. So they're uninsured. They may be in a spouse's policy, but they're not going to the doctor unless they're croaking, because they're not going to miss work and they're not going to take the time to do it or pay for it. So,
and they're certainly not going to miss a race.
No. I mean, I know 2 drag racers right now by name in our series that are undergoing cancer treatments while they're racing. They get it. They know what it is. And do you want me to tell the story about the pneumonia? And I'll tell that story.
Yeah, I think that if you personally, and obviously I know all of this, but I think if you personally are willing to, or want to open up about some of the struggles that you've had to deal with in the last year or two, I think that is then going to, because a lot of people don't know, you and I keep things very, like you, me, and your boyfriend Randy have constant conversation, and even Randy and I will have, which people find weird, which we laugh about.
Weird for us.
Yeah, Randy and I will have conversations about it too. And that's why we didn't see you at the Midwest banquet in January when I was out in Tulsa. So let's talk about that for a second.
I had bronchitis, like something, I think like everyone, we joke about coming home with the plague, like PRI is where COVID was invented, because, we joke that every year when we all come home from PRI, we're sick. So, I came home, cough a little bit, cough, whatever. It was getting close to Christmas, and I really wanted to enjoy some off season. So I went to urgent care, and they're like, you don't even have bronchitis. We're not going to give you anything. No antibiotics, whatever. I'm like, can I at least get some cough medicine? Because I can't stop coughing and I can't sleep and I'm becoming a little crabby. Anyway, I think that was like the 23rd. Well, by the time my regular doctor's office opened after the holiday weekend, I want to say it was like a Thursday. It was probably like the 27th. I was sick. I was sick. And she took one look at me and she's like, okay, we're going to aggressively treat this. We'll do because she knows I don't have insurance, and she does everything she can to make it affordable. So I will come and get taken care of. So she gave me a ton of antibiotics and sent me home, and the cough medicines and the help me sleepy stuff, the whole shebang. Like I said, I think that was the 27th. The 28th or the 29th and 30th, I literally don't remember, because I was so sick that I was over medicating myself with over the counter stuff so that because I thought if I could sleep it off, I wouldn't cough and I would be better. And I'm pretty sure I way overdid it on the medication, but it didn't help. And I have a blood oxygen, the thinker thing, the pulse oximeter. And I remember from COVID, the realization that, if your percentage went below 92, you need to go right to the doctor. And my doctor told me that day in the office. She said, you have one, right? I'm like, yes. She said, if you get 94, 93, you need to be worried. 92, get your clothes on. And if you go below 90, you need an ambulance. And she said, typically 85 to 88 is when they put you on a ventilator. And she said, I want you to be that worried. Okay, well, gotcha. I'm that worried. So I saw her again. I think it was like the 29th or 30th. But I was so sick the morning of New Year's Eve that I woke Randy up and I'm like, my oxygen level's like 86 or 87. I can't catch my breath. I can't breathe. I feel like I'm having a heart attack because I can't breathe. So we went to the ER, and, I was in the ER for about 3 minutes when they realized, okay, well, they did a chest x-ray, completely clear, nothing wrong. You don't have pneumonia. I mean, literally couldn't sit up, couldn't function, couldn't stop coughing, crying. They were doing EKGs because they were sure that I was having heart something, and then I was just putting myself in a panic attack. Well, there was a foreign exchange student there, and he said, let's get a CT scan. Well, they did the CT scan, and they immediately found my entire right lung was full. Whatever it was with the x-ray, they couldn't see it, but my other lung was half full and my right lung was completely full. And it took me 3 months to get the pneumonia out of my lung. Anyway, CT scan, they saw an enlarged lymph node right under my armpit by my breast. Lymph nodes typically react to infection. So because I was so sick, they equated it to, that's why your white blood count's high. That's why your lymph nodes are like that, blah, 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 blah. Well, I couldn't get over the pneumonia. I was in the hospital for 4.5 days, came home from the hospital on a Thursday. The Midwest banquet was Saturday. I went out to dinner with people on Friday night, but I couldn't even stand Saturday. And I'm pretty sure I was crying leaving the Mexican restaurant because I didn't know if I could get home. I was so tired. But I was sick. I mean, I was still working, but in bed sick for a month. Couldn't stop coughing. Couldn't figure out why I couldn't stop coughing, which led to, I've never had a panic attack, but I'm pretty sure that's where I was going with it. I couldn't lay down. I couldn't sit up. I couldn't get comfortable. I couldn't take a shower. I couldn't go outside and breathe air. If anything made me start coughing, it was over. Like, just write me off. I wasn't going to stop for the day. So my doctor was vigilant about wanting to keep seeing me. And, she got the CT scan results. Somebody tried to call again. Okay. She got the CT scan results and said, we need to keep an eye on that lymph node. Well, I mean, I don't even remember what month it was, but I really was not 100% better even May.
Yeah, I was gonna say, even in March, when we were supposed to kick off the season, you were not ready for that.
No. Horribly upset we had rainouts and everything like that, but I wasn't capable of going to the track in March.
Yeah, I agree.
But so she made me go back for follow-up tests, and then she sent me, because the lymph node never shrunk. In fact, it was getting bigger. And of course, you can Google doctor yourself right to your deathbed, which I pretty much done.
Yep, WebMD yourself.
Yeah. Google Doc says you're not going to make it past this search. So she sent me to a general surgeon. He did a biopsy, was super quiet. It was in June. So this is really recent. Did a biopsy, said immediately, I need to go in and get out, see what's going on. But we had a security breach at the hospital, and it took time for them to get the lab test results back. And I'm like, no lab test results back. Nobody's called me. It must be fine. I remember him calling me on a Friday at 11 a.m. about 3 or 4, but I guess it's been about 4 weeks now, and said, hi, I need to take you in for surgery and we need to take this out. I'm about 99% sure you have breast cancer. And I was hysterical. I dialed everyone on the phone I could well, not everyone, the couple people that I love, I dialed on the phone. Randy was in a meeting, couldn't get you. Shelley Riffle was at work. I finally got Courtney Lewis on the phone. I'm just sobbing. And she's like, just take a breath. You're going to be fine. And I remember telling the doctor, I can go next week. Schedule me for the mammogram next week. I can go next week. And I was at the grocery store when this happened. And I wasn't even out at the produce section. And the nurse calls back and said, we have you scheduled for a 3D and a 4D ultrasound mammogram in 30 minutes at the hospital. And I'm like, okay, so I'm going to die, or this is bad. This is really bad.
I remember those conversations, and those were not easy conversations to have, because you go to I don't want to say the extreme, but you are one of those that can very easily worry yourself into being sick. And I think Randy and I had to do a lot of, we can't worry about what we don't know yet.
Mm-hmm. But the fact that he was moving so quickly was good. But it was even more concerning. And so Monday I had an MRI. The next Monday I had an MRI, and before I got home from the MRI, they had the results. We think it could be metastatic breast cancer. Oh, here's the fun part. I didn't get the call from my doctor. I missed a call, and I got an alert on my chart that a new result was posted in my chart, and it said the words metastatic breast cancer.
The worst thing, and Randy and I have talked about this, the worst thing ever created was being able to access your own medical charts at any time, because and don't get me wrong, I've got the same thing from when I had my stroke, and it's got all the photos and everything, and I've looked at it like twice in the last 4 years. I'm like, I'm never going to do that again. Like, I want to be told by a medical professional what in the hell is wrong with me. You, on the other hand, wanted to worry yourself to death and immediately thought the worst, which is understandable.
By the way, it's against the standards of my chart to put anything in my chart for the patient that is considered critical care. Cancer, heart blockage, stuff like that. It should never have been there before I was told. Anyway, still, it was good. Everything, it turned out it was okay. They went in, they did surgery, they took the lymph node out. I still have a high white blood count, but I'm only 3 weeks post-surgery right now. And he said when I went for my follow-up, I was 100% sure you had cancer, because the lymph node had whatever markers or shapes or whatever. I thought so. The people in the OR thought so. He says, I sent it off for 3 biopsies, and we normally send 1, maybe 2. He said, and all 3 are completely clear. There's nothing wrong.
So let me ask you something. The only reason that this was found was because of the bronchitis, pneumonia type of symptoms that you were having. That you could have gone another year, 2 years before this became something that, I've got to go get this checked out. So I'm not going to say a fluke, but it was by accident that they found this issue to begin with, correct?
Yes, and I couldn't even feel it. Even the day of surgery, when it was 4 centimeters, I think, I still couldn't feel it. So it's not like something you would have felt in a breast exam or anything anyway. You wouldn't have known. And if my chest x-ray from the pneumonia at the very beginning had shown that I had pneumonia and they didn't have to do a CT, you know, in my head, when I thought I had cancer in that short period of time, thank goodness it was very brief, I thought to myself, the pneumonia could have saved my life, you know?
Which is a really weird thing to think about.
And the vigilance, because I had to keep going back to the doctor. And I kept thinking, I don't want more antibiotics. I don't want more cough medicine. I'm tired of going to the doctor and saying the same thing. But I knew I wasn't right. And I had to keep going back because I couldn't get well.
I was going to say, you were pretty persistent the entire time that you were going through this. You were pretty persistent with them about there's something not right and we need to figure it out. And I know that Randy and I both were a little bit pushy at times, but that's because you probably got really sick of us talking about, you know, well, you kind of need to do something about this because you were coughing so bad, you were never sleeping, which, you know, then can affect your mental health. But how are you feeling now?
I'm good. I don't have really any trouble with my lungs or anything. If I start coughing, even if something in the air and I start coughing, I have to be careful because it will go into full-blown coughing again. My right lung, even as recent as June, still had fluid in the base of it. You know, and they could go, I guess they can go in and extract it out or something, but no, that wasn't going to be a choice. But I feel fine. I've healed pretty much from the surgery and the biopsy. I still can't raise my right arm all the way up. But I don't have cancer. They, honest to God, can't find any reason why my white blood count is still so high or what was breeding the lymph node to grow. So the very worst case scenario right now they think is I could have lymphoma, which is still cancer. But otherwise they're thinking some area of an autoimmune disease. But I feel great. I'm not sick. I'm back to sleeping. I'm not mentally drained. I mean, that whole 2-3 week period, I was a nutcase.
You don't have to trust me. When I say you don't have to tell me, I know you don't have to tell me because I was getting messages at 3 o'clock in the afternoon or 3 o'clock in the morning. I can't sleep. I'm sitting here like, hey, what are you doing? Are you awake? You know, because I have such a jacked up sleep schedule anyways, that most of the time I'm awake at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And Ellen always knows that she can call me no matter what time and just keep calling me until I wake up if I'm asleep anyways. And I'm always going to answer because Ellen is one of 2 or 3 people that I will, unless I'm, you know, in the shower or something like that, I'm not going to send her to voicemail. And if I do, she's going to keep calling until I answer anyways. But yeah, you were, that was a rough period for a lot of us. And sometimes, I hate to say this, it can be even more rough because you feel like, who can I talk to about this so the entire world doesn't know what's going on? Because we live in, and you and I are part of this industry that you've always hated the term media. I don't mind the term media. I consider myself a journalist, which a lot of people, you know, don't particularly like me for, you know, what I write and what I have to say, and I don't care. You've always been the yin to my yang. We balance each other out very well because you're the nice one and I'm not. But I mean, it's hard because segueing back into racing after that, it's hard because so many times you don't know who you can trust to talk about something. I know that you and I both get every single week, we get phone calls about something that is happening within the industry that we can't talk about. Because we respect the relationships and the friendships that we've built with other people. You and I will talk about it with each other, but publicly we, you know, never talk about it. I mean, I hate to, you know, it like the phone call at the Mexican restaurant when, you know, we were at Flying H, and you know, yeah, we were at Flying H because you and I was Flying H. Huh? Oh, St. Louis. Listen, I can't keep track of my Missouri stuff at this point because I've been to fly the Flying H area twice and St. Louis once in like the last 5 weeks. So
It's all misery.
I can't keep up anymore. But sitting across the table from you, and because you and I know each other so well, like you get a phone call and I can see in your eyes, in the way in your mouth is quivering, that something was not right. And you know, we were there with a group of people, and luckily you and I know how to communicate with each other without having to verbally communicate. And you kind of, you know, mouthed what was going on, and it was a phone call in regards to Lizzie and, you know, her current condition at that time. This was before we lost Lizzie, but like, you know, it's things like that. Like, you don't have a lot of people that you can talk to about these things when you get to a certain level in your career and personal life where people trust you enough to talk to you about things. And I you know, I see it all the time. Like I've especially in the almost 5 years that more than 5 years essentially that we lived together, the amount of times that you would get a phone call and I'd be like, "Hey, who was that? What's going on?" I could tell you, but you can't tell anybody else.
Yeah,
Which, as a journalist, my job is to report things, and I'm like, well,
we might go on a couple rounds on that, on some things.
Honestly, though, I think for the most part, I think there have been less than a handful of times in the last 10 years where I'm like, this really needs to be something that we report, and you were very adamant that we weren't going to, and I was okay with that. I never once said, never once tried to put my foot down and be like, no, we're going to do this because it's, you know, this, that, or the other thing, because we're journalists. We are best friends, and we are friends with this entire community long before the job, because those friendships hopefully will last long after you and I both decide to walk away from the shit show that is drag racing. So,
and some of it is so sensitive. Like the night that we were at the Mexican restaurant and got the call that Lizzie wasn't going to make it through the night. I mean, it's so sensitive. But you know at that moment how extraordinary it was about to be, and how, I don't mean extraordinary good, but you just know the impact that it's about to have.
Yes.
You know, yeah, when Matt Zimmerman passed away last weekend, you know, I 100% respect the family and respected Mark for calling and telling me. But after a period of time, I said, can I tell anybody? Because there are a few people that we are all close to in this racing community that I would not like to not find out on Facebook. You know, and I have that respect with people that they're like, yes, you know, yes, our family knows, yes. Another very good example right now is John Force.
Yeah.
I have people very close to this situation in other teams, not just John. But I was so torn because that, you know, he was awake on the stretcher when everyone saw him and they thought it was just another John accident. Correct. And I don't know why it bothered me so bad that he was hurt so bad and everyone thought he was fine. I guess it just more or less pissed me off. Like, you have no idea what they're going through, you know? There was a situation at the next race in Norwalk where the teams are there and someone comes over to somebody and says, I want my MF and money back because I paid for tickets to come see John Force race.
And so some of this has got to do with the entire decorum in which we treat each other nowadays. I know you and I have had a lot of talks about the John Force stuff. I made it abundantly clear to anybody that messaged me that I would not talk about anything that was not officially released by the Force camp. Mm-hmm. It's not that I don't trust sources. It's that this was such a life kind of altering moment for not only the industry, but John, you know, because you've worked in the NHRA arena. I know from the media side of it, John is one of the nicest and most grateful people that I have ever um, been around as far as media goes. And it didn't matter whether I was at an NHRA event photographing him, or if we were at that place in Brownsburg or Avon or whatever it is that we would go have lunch at. He didn't know me from Tom, Dick, or Harry. You know, I'm not a Bobby Bennett. I'm not one of these the guy that's got the podcast that also works for NHRA. I can't remember his name now, and I feel terrible because he's great at what he does.
Costello.
Yeah, Joe. I mean, he doesn't know me from Bobby or Joe or, you know, the guys that are always there, but he always would say hello, shake my hand, smile. And I'm like, out of respect, I told everybody, I said, and really, I didn't care if it was my closest friend. I think the only person that I talked to about the situation besides you was my mother, because my mother is such a huge John Force fan. Mm-hmm. I was lucky enough to take her in 2009 to meet John and Ashley when Ashley was still racing. We went to the 66 race because obviously you know that is the closest NHRA national event to, honestly, where both you and I both grew up. That I was able to take her, and she was able to meet John and able to, you know, get a selfie with John and get a selfie with Ashley. And I didn't want her to find out information on the internet, which was information that I was putting out. I would typically, especially right after it happened, with the first week or so after it happened, she's not going to tell anybody. She doesn't know anybody anyways. And if I didn't tell her, you were going to anyways, because she still talks to you all the time too. So, you know, things like that. But it's so difficult sometimes to balance that obligation for me, not nearly as much for you, because you, again, always hated the term media. You were never a fan of that. You tried to stay away from that drama as much as possible, but balancing the journalism side versus the friendship and respect side for the family and for John himself, I'm like, again, that's one of those situations that it's always going to take precedence, that the friendship and everything and the respect comes before the journalism side. That's probably why I would never be a journalist for, you know, some like New York Times or Washington Post or Fox News. Or I value the friendships more than I value a check, if you will, because, you know, obviously I could have, you know, you and I.
Jeez.
Oh, here's those technical difficulties again that I'm talking
I dropped the phone. I'll get a mounty thing for my phone for another time. Terrible.
And a prime example of that is, listen, we could have done the really, pardon my French, but we could have done the dick move and been like, oh, here's a, you know, TMZ style article about, you know, Lizzie is in bad shape, or Lizzie's in, you know, we're not those people. We never have been those people. We don't post photos of crashes. We don't post videos of crashes. But the decorum in which people handle themselves nowadays on the internet is, and you know, because I've actually seen you blow up about it lately, is, and you've taken a much different approach than I have, because you will scream at people about this. Oh, she's getting a phone call. I can always tell when she's getting a phone call because my audio goes all kinds of funny.
Yep. It's Keith.
Oh, well, just send him to voicemail. You have gone to the point of pretty much telling people to piss off in the Ellen way about, you know, crashes and stuff like that, whereas because I see it all the time on the internet. Where's the video? Where are the photos? There aren't any, or there are, and like I think one of the ones that I remember so well was Kyle Hutel and Dave Bowman at SGMP, and we had the entire crash sequence. And I still have it on a hard drive somewhere, but guess what? It's not. I think we posted one photo, and that was it, because that's not who we are as a company. And we have always, both of us sat down, you and I both sat down and said, we're just not going to go down that road. We don't need to. We can do better. And people will bash me all the time, but they'll tell me it's my responsibility as a journalist to do these things. And I'm like, me being a good human being takes precedence over being a shitty journalist.
And people have gotten crafty because now they're like, well, I want to see the videos so we can see what's safety stuff. Okay,
Bullshit.
Look, there's not much of a bigger safety advocate than me. And I ask every driver after a crash in an appropriate time frame, what would you have done different? Is there anything that didn't work, did work? Tell us about it. And at that point, usually the drivers give us their blessing to post a photo or video or whatever. But not then. Like, especially, I don't know, it's just so hard at the track. And that's where me taking a picture of the racer after the crash, hey, look, not happy, but here he is alive and there's no scratches.
Exactly.
I'm not a TMZ. It's not a sensational story for me when someone crashes. It is for a lot of people. And obviously we know it is for NASCAR, but it's not sensational to me.
The thing that I've noticed is you have been doing that for a very, very long time. Probably the entire time that we were together and that you lived here and we were traveling the road. You had always made it a point after an incident that you would go find the driver in his pits, check on him, yada, 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 and then take a photo and post it so that people knew that he was. I think you set a trend with it because I see other people doing that and taking the right approach to it. And I've always told people it's very difficult to build lasting relationships within this industry, but it takes very little time to destroy those relationships if you decide that you're going to go down the wrong path. And I think that that the things that you and I have gone through and witnessed have really kind of influenced. Obviously, you've seen some scary stuff in NHRA, back in the other pro mod organization, the old pro mod organization that neither of us talk about. Some things happened over there, and I know, personally that you've taken safety very, very seriously and understand the emotional and human side of things. And I think that's why people love you and appreciate you so much, because you are not the sensationalizing type of person. And I think it gives you, not that you need it, I think it gives you even more legitimacy in regards to, listen, if Ellen says this, we can take that to the bank because she's not going to bullshit us about it. And she's not going to post something just, you're not in it for the likes. And just so people understand the dynamic here. Ellen and I are the co-founders of this company. I do the day-to-day and have for, the better part of the company's existence. There are certain things that I will run by Ellen, and there are certain things that, she'll tell me about, and we'll decide whether it's something that we're going to report on, or if it's information that she gives me that we can't report on yet, but I can write an article about it so it's ready to go out when it's appropriate.
That happens way more than you think, people.
Yes, a lot of, with the exception of the editorial stuff, which I don't ever have to run by Ellen. She has never, I think in my entire career as a journalist, she's probably only put the kibosh on a couple of, probably two things that I was not allowed, if you will. And it was a respect thing. And she explained to me why we weren't going to go down that road. And I respect it. And someday when her and I sit down and write a book, which will have to be like volume 1, volume 2, volume 3, volume 4. Otherwise it'll be longer than War and Peace. maybe some of that stuff we will talk about what I didn't write about or what Ellen and I didn't talk about. So and I think that's why we started the company to do it differently, because I think a lot of people get into this and they go down the same road because drag racing does not like change. I will say this. This is what I will say about drag racing. One, and I've talked about it before and I've wrote articles about it before, drag racing is its own worst enemy. And secondly, drag racing doesn't like change. If you look at NASCAR, if you look at Indy, F1, all of these other motorsports entities, they are all willing to change and change in. Did you know that there's a new F1 movie coming out next year? Oh, Ellen froze up on us. Oh, there you are. Okay. There's a new F1 movie. There's a new F1 movie coming out next year, and this starring Brad Pitt as an F1 driver. And they dropped the trailer for it, the teaser trailer, a year before its release. Do you know what they're going to be talking about in motorsports for the next year? An F1 movie starring Brad Pitt, who is arguably one of the biggest movie stars in the world. Drag racing, because everything trickles down in drag racing. Everything starts at NHRA and trickles down from there. If NHRA doesn't like you, then nobody else should. And NHRA doesn't want change. Obviously, I'm not going to sit here and badmouth NHRA. We have an understanding they don't like me. I like some of their product. I don't like the direction that they go in a lot of the time. And now I'm seeing that they're trying to become more and more like F1. And drag racing is never going to be like F1. It's never going to be a Hollywood experience, if you will, because most people still relate drag racing to out in your garage at 2:00 in the morning with, loud noises and stinky fumes and, all of this and that. So, but I think that you and I have, again, we started this to do something different, because when I say different, all the media outlets were pretty much doing the same thing. It was a copy and paste. Nobody had an opinion, an actual opinion on something. And if they did, they were always afraid to voice it, because unfortunately in this industry, there are repercussions. If you voice something, your opinion, and it's not looked upon in a kind light, if you will, because some people
I can't get media credentials at NHRA anymore.
Yeah, I mean, and that's
I run a Pro Mod series and have taken some funny cars.
And unfortunately, some of the things that I have said regarding, my thoughts on NHRA and some of their decisions have trickled over and affected Ellen and even her ability to get media credentials, because they won't issue credentials to our company at all anymore.
But they still have to see me, so I'm still winning.
if there's a Top Fuel driver out there, that if he has his choice, you may see me at a national event here and there also. I'm not gonna put him on the spot, but I have talked to somebody who would, and he will be on the podcast at some point also, that would love to have me as their team photographer for the weekend. So I'm just saying,
that's a fun team too.
Oh yeah. But it goes back to, we wanted to do it different. We did a lot of things different, as far as a lot of ideas. Ellen and I come up with some crazy ideas. She really kicked off this whole Facebook Live. And I honestly, in my opinion, as far as within our industry, what you did with Facebook Live then became a trend on all of social media, whether that's Instagram, TikTok, whatever it may be. It became a trend, and I'm sorry, but nobody has done it as well as you have. And it's also because it goes back to the old analogy or the old saying that you cannot replace knowledge, and that's
Mhm.
and you
Can't
have
fake knowledge.
you can't. And again, there's a ton of people that have opinions that we're always too scared to voice them. And me, I'm not ever going to be afraid to voice my opinion about anything, whether it gets me in trouble or not. So I think that we did a lot of good on that aspect, and then the branding aspect. I mean, I'm looking right here. Where's my camera? Here,
I know. I'm classic.
yeah, you're classic, and I'm Menscer. So, but seriously,
People who have supported the absolute living heck out of us.
yeah, for 10 years essentially. Um, and here's the deal. I'm not going to toot my own horn, and Ellen thought it was a crazy idea. I remember the first time I pitched her this idea, because we didn't have a magazine that we could, write and sell advertising in. And we were trying to figure out how we were going to make money doing this. And I said, we're going to sell ad space on our photos. We're going to brand companies on it. And she's like, what are you talking about? And I kind of showed her like a mock-up or whatever of it, and she says, nobody is ever going to pay money to have their logos on our photos.
I'm like, what company wants their name across 1,000 photos after an event? Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah, because nobody was doing that 10 years ago. And now you look at how much the industry has changed. It is, and it's not a kudos thing. Like, I don't need some pat on the back, because I know who created this idea, and it was you and I. She thought I was crazy, and I asked her to just trust me. And Steve Johnson from Induction Solutions down in Florida was the first person to ever be a branding partner on our coverage for anything. I will always be grateful to Steve Johnson. He was the very first. He was invoice 0001. And I will always be grateful for him and Induction Solutions for coming on board. And I mean, I got to thank him as much as I got to thank you for, one, putting up with my crazy ideas, but two, I've got to thank Steve for, having the wherewithal that, hey, maybe this is a good idea. And then Mark over at Menscer Motorsports, who has been, I think this is his 7th full-time year with us. 7th or 8th full-time year with us. I don't remember. And then Scott Bathurst. Listen, we were broke. And when I say broke, Ellen and I had about enough to buy a sandwich and split it. We were broke. And Scott, who Ellen had obviously worked with on the NHRA side, Scott emailed me, and he said, do you guys need some shirts? And I said, Scott, we can't afford shirts. And he said, and he says, Damon, you guys need shirts. Scott and I, and the three of us, have had a working relationship since that email. And I will never, ever, ever have another company do E3 Extreme apparel other than Scott Bathurst over Classic Graphix. Period.
Because Scott not only wanted us to have shirts for branding, Scott, I don't think either of us knew, but Scott sent an enormous box of shirts, 50, 75, 100 of them. Like, Scott, we can't wear that many shirts. He goes, no, sell them. Put some money in your pocket for gas to the next race.
Yeah, he has been an absolute godsend, and Mark Menscer, I can't say enough amazing things. And everyone's got their personal preferences as far as what equipment they use on their cars. Mark revolutionized the way that things are looked at in the radio world, and even outside the radio world at this point with the technology that he's brought. You and I have spent time at his home. Spent time with him and his wife, Allie. Two of the most just amazing and smart human beings that you will ever meet. Like, I remember the first time that Ellen and I stayed at Mark's house, and I get Mark to pull out the
No one should be surprised at this story because of Chaos Ellen traveling.
I wasn't even getting there yet, but I get Mark to, what a lot of people don't realize unless you've watched the podcast that I did with Mark a few years ago. Mark was like a guitar prodigy also. Like an amazing guitar player. I get him to, you know, pull out the guitar, and we're going back and forth watching YouTube videos, and then, you know, in typical Ellen traveling fashion, because if any of you follow what happens on Ellen's travels, there's always a disaster.
Every time.
Ellen and I are laying in bed, and she looks over at me, and she's like, and Mark and Allie live out on a farm, so there's not a
Very
whole,
remote.
yeah, there's not a whole lot. I mean, I know it's been a while since you've been there. There are a lot more houses on the end of the road now. They built up that area, not out by Mark and Allie, but I remember her looking over and going, what's going on outside? Because the blinds were closed, but you could see like flashing lights outside. And I rolled over and looked at her, and I'm like, you can legitimately see as much as I can right now what's going on
And the
outside.
power went out.
Yeah. So we get up, and Mark had just moved the cows to that pasture actually that afternoon, and somebody unfortunately had taken a curve that's close to Mark's house too fast. I don't know what was all involved, but they ended up in the culvert, and it knocked out the electric fence, took out a section of fence. Unfortunately, that person did not make it. But yeah, then we were all scrambling. Mark and Allie and Ellen and I were all scrambling to make sure all the animals were accounted for, and that the cows got moved. And I think they still had goats at the time also. They all got moved to another pasture that had, you know, appropriate fencing. But again, it's one of those, only in Ellen world do those things happen. But my point of that is the relationships that we've built with our branding partners over the years, people like Mark and Allie, who, you know, we've spent time at their house, and, you know, on a very intimate friendship level, dinners and things like that, that I hold much more valuable than any business arrangement that I will ever have with people. But again, it comes back to Mark was the first paying yearly branding partner that we had, and to his credit, year after year, I think he still continues to see the value in what E3 does, and bringing him now with the amount of car show and mini truck stuff that I've been doing. I've got mini truck guys contacting me going, we need really good shocks and stuff. So I've actually got to make a trip to West Virginia soon to sit down with one of my mini truck friends and talk to him about what guys in the industry are using over there, so that I can relay that back to Mark, and, you know, helping Mark expand the business as much as he can.
And I've learned just from Daniel's trip to Thailand, I mean, the stuff they don't even know about over there that is common and normal for us here. You know, there's so much to be taught there.
Well, and let's face it, I mean, you've got drag racing in Eastern Europe, you know, Western Europe, Asia, Australia. I mean, we're pretty much drag racing or some form of motorsports on every single continent except for Antarctica. And I'm sure if somebody could figure out a way to put a drag strip and travel arrangements, we would have some kind of ice racing in Antarctica. I hope that never happens, because that would be the dumbest thing imaginable.
Well, you remember even when Adam Flamhawk took it to Russia. I mean, that was new. I mean, we've been through the Bahrain, Kuwait, Dubai stuff. You know, it's global. It's incredible, and people are watching.
And it is the most diverse sport in the world. I will argue this until the day they put me in the ground, that there is not another sport that is as diverse as drag racing. Men, women, young, old, doesn't matter your religion, your political affiliation, your sexuality, none of that matters. All that matters is two people, or in some cases the four, that take that pre-stage and that stage beam and the tree drops, and that's it. I mean, nothing else matters. It doesn't matter if you're 8 or 88. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. None of that matters. And we've got such a variety. It does gas, diesel, now electric. There's so many different ways to do it. And there's always going to be a need for people to talk about it, to write about it, to organize it, like in Ellen's case, to organize it and put on events. And that's I'm going to hold off because next week there is a subject that I want to talk about, and Ellen and I have talked about it privately, and I'm going to tell her now, but it's in regards to what happens to the community when the older people in the community, whether it's promoters, chassis builders, engine builders, yada, 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 when they decide to hang it up. And
we have 3 big ones right now. I think only one is public.
Yeah.
And they're all 3 companies that everybody would know. But it's something to talk about, and we'll talk about it next week.
Yeah, it's, I think we need to, where do we get the young promoters from? Because listen, Tyler Crossnow used to be a kid. I remember going to his Holly Springs race, and I think it was 2011 or 2012, somewhere around there, and he was doing a radio race. There were 4 photographers there, and Sean Melton was there doing video. It was me, James Sisk. James had a friend named Nubs, who went on to do great photography as well, but was not a photographer, if you will, at the time. And then my buddy Justin, who I just handed a camera and said, "Hey, take some photos." And now Tyler has grown into essentially the position that you do. He does over with PDRA. Plus, I think he's still the track manager or whatever at Virginia Motorsports Park. But finding people like Tyler is a rarity.
I wasn't crazy enough to take over the track manager at Tulsa, so don't go there.
And trust me, guys, Ellen is not the only one that's tried to convince me to move to Oklahoma, and guess what's not going to happen? I'm not moving to Oklahoma or Texas or Kansas or Missouri, because Missouri is another one that people are trying to get me to move to. And I'm like, no, I'm good where I'm at for now. Though I would like a bigger garage. I will say that was my quest on the internet yesterday, was looking at storage spaces and what I could do to actually have enough room to do anything at my house. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot to talk about. It's funny because Ellen was so concerned when I first presented her with the idea of doing a regular podcast. She's like, "I don't know if I can do it weekly. We don't have enough to talk about." I said, "We have enough to talk about for 2 or 3 hours a day, every single day of the week, because we talk every single day of the week." I said, "There's never going to be a lack of stuff to talk about. It's just going to be whether people want to listen to it, and people don't always want to listen to me, but they certainly the hell want to listen to you."
I like talking.
Well, and I think it's good because for years you and I have had to go through this this thing that you and I can only talk to each other about stuff. And I think, like I told her last week when I first said, listen, I think we really need to start doing a podcast together. And she agreed. And I said, there's plenty of things to talk about. We can even talk about the stuff that we're not supposed to talk about, as long as we're vague enough about it. So there will be times that you will get us talking about stuff, and we will leave out details or people's names, or, protect the innocent or whatever it may be. But the names and events may have changed to protect somebody's whatever.
On the next episode of Drag Racing CSI.
Exactly. And
My cat is snoring, like crazy snoring.
I'm actually surprised that I'm willing to bet when I walk out of this room, at least 2 of them are laying outside, and it's hot up here. I'm telling you, the AC up here, because I don't have the money to have somebody actually come over and figure out what the hell is wrong with it. And I need to buy a new thermostat for upstairs and downstairs. And Randy told me that I should buy these EcoBees or whatever. So it's on my Amazon birthday wish list. And speak of that,
all you have to do is say, Alexa, it's hot here. And all of a sudden, 2 degrees cooler.
Yeah. And speak of my Amazon wish list before I let everybody go for the day. Somebody bought something off my Amazon wish list for my birthday. They bought the gray the Delta hat, the hat that I wanted, and one of those bleep your feelings keychains, kind of like the remove before flight ones. And they sent a note with it, and all it said was, enjoy your birthday or something. I have no idea who bought it. Who, like, if you're gonna send me something off of my ridiculous Amazon birthday list, at least let me know who you are so I can, thank you. I mean, that would be nice. But I think we're about an hour and 26 in. I think I'm sweating like a stuffed pig right now. So
and I need to go to work before Boss Daniel gets mad.
Oh, and Randy will be home in like an hour and 11 minutes and 12 seconds or something like that.
Yep.
If you want if you want to talk about clockwork, that's exactly. So I appreciate everybody tuning in, and I hope that we will get you back next week again.
Send questions. If there's stuff you want to talk about or things you've always wanted to know out of my mouth, I'll say most of them. So if there's things you want us to talk about or a situation or something from the past, let us know.
And there will be times where we will do this live. We are recording on Tuesday right now, and I will tell you that the reason that we are recording on Tuesday is because it's Ellen's least busy day. And the reason that we're not doing this live right now is because there is another very popular podcast that is on Tuesday nights with 3 co-hosts that we are all friends with, and
Big Shake.
Yeah, that one. And she's right. It's the Shake and Bake Show with Courtney, Stevie, and Lyle, who I think are all great people. But don't want to obviously go up against that. They've got a great following. People enjoy what they say. I can't say that I've watched, but you know me, I don't ever watch anything really. So that's why we're not doing this on Tuesday nights live. I will probably drop these on Wednesday morning for all of you to watch. And obviously, if you're not able to watch, the audio version is pretty much everywhere that you can get your podcast from, whether that's Apple or Spotify or yada yada yada. Okay. Well, yeah. Do you guys still have the Google Play Store? I don't know. I mean, are you guys still running like Windows XP over there, or what are you doing?
Yeah, you Apple people in your electric cars, though. So I mean, still, I can go somewhere for more than an hour.
I'm going to let that one slide.
Yeah, we're just going to let it go there.
Is there anything that you want to touch on before we call it a day?
No. Mm-mm. Nope.
So you're going to be willing to come back for another one?
I'll come back. Got some more stuff I want to talk about. Would like to have a chat about my first ever Facebook Live with our viewers one day.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that we will talk about the importance of Facebook Live, and if you've got any advice for those who do Facebook Live, I would love to do a whole segment on that, because I think that, especially from the safety aspect of what a lot of people don't realize, is when Ellen was doing Facebook Live, she also had a full-size DSLR with a Pro Series lens on it, taking starting line photos and doing Facebook Live at the same time. So I think that's definitely something we could talk about. So until next time, Ellen, I appreciate the time, and we shall chat later. Everybody, if you have not, please feel free to subscribe if you like what we're doing, and we will keep doing it for you. Thank you.
Bye.